Thank you. And Bill, what do you do next?
First, I'd like to thank the sponsors of the forum, Angela Johnson and Professor Elizabeth Benyon, as well as the American Democracy Project and the IUSB Political Science Club. This certainly represents a tremendous opportunity to have kind of an educational forum here to talk about things. And my feeling today is we can all walk out, hopefully, having learned something. And so I think it's important that universities facilitate dialogue and encourage both learning and understanding. And so I was asked to provide some information about the campus in terms of the types of business operator partnerships we have with vendors and how purchasing and contracts kind of work. So we have kind of the traditional vendors on campus. For office supplies, we buy Dell computers, we use Microsoft software, Apple software, Apple computers, so on. We buy furniture from all kinds of vendors. And then think about it, we have Coke versus Pepsi. And so that's a type of contracted thing where it's been some sort of bid and Coke was selected over Pepsi, and now we're exclusively Coke and Coke-related products on campus. Okay? Then we also have contractors we deal with in terms of buildings, new buildings or building renovations, major projects. And then we also, outsourcing is a common thing you see with universities. And so on this campus and all the IU campuses, the bookstores were outsourced to Barnes & Noble. And then you have sponsorships. For example, Steak and Shake has sponsored our athletic programs. So that's kind of a different type of relationship with businesses. So that kind of gives you a flavor of the different types of relationships that a university has. And then the question is asked, well, what does it take to become a vendor with the university? And really, there's kind of a phrase out there that's probably not entirely accurate. You hear an expression on campus, an approved vendor. Okay? It's not really an approved vendor, it's more of a qualified vendor. In other words, if they filed the paperwork, okay? In other words, to get them in the system to pay them, we need your name, we need your business address, we need your taxpayer identification number, that sort of thing to even pay you. So that's essential for you to be a vendor, is we have to know how to pay you. Then you have to have a certificate of insurance for liability level of $1 million. And there's a price tag to have that level of insurance coverage. And then there is a vendor code of conduct, and I'll talk about that momentarily, that the vendors are supposed to abide by to deal with the university. And then finally, if you're a food vendor, you have to have had satisfactory health department inspections. And so conceivably, if you were a food vendor and you had a lot of health department problems, then you might be disapproved. But otherwise, think of it as a checklist. If you meet the checklist, you're qualified then to be a vendor. A little bit about the direction the university is going in. This past year, the university centralized all purchasing options on all 7 campuses. So now all purchasing reports to the Bloomington purchasing office. And so they believe, one, they can be more efficient having a centralized operation, but what they talk a lot about is they want to take the buying power and leverage it for all 7 campuses. Rather than having 7 campuses purchase from maybe 7 different vendors for, say, office supplies, they want to take the purchasing power of all 7 campuses and basically bid out and get contracts for certain major types of things commonly purchased by the universities, and then say, okay, all 7 campuses, you're going to buy all your office supplies from this one vendor. And so, we're going to see more of a bidding type environment to be a contracted vendor for all of IU. And it's going to be for things such as office supplies, furniture, and so on. And like, for example, we're exclusively Dell computer. I mean, we have Apple, but I mean, we don't buy Hewlett-Packard computers. We buy Dell computers. But at some point, they will rebid that. So if Dell doesn't get that bid, you may see in a few years where all of a sudden we'll have nothing but HP computers or something. So that's the direction the computer's going, and the university's going in with purchasing. Now the supplier code of conduct is more kind of basic things. You have to comply with laws and regulations. You have to have some basic environmental practices that you follow. You have to have safe work environments for your employees. You have to have fair labor practices. You can't have child labor and things like that. You have to have ethical business practices. In other words, you shouldn't be in the paper and in court for fraud and kickbacks, that type of thing. And then finally, the university reserves the right to audit any vendor for these types of things. And then to become a contractor to work on building projects for the campus. Again, you have to kind of do the paperwork. You have to have the certificate of insurance at the level of $1 million. You have to routinely and actively perform random drug testing on all of your employees. You have to pay a prevailing wage set by the state of Indiana Department of Labor. So another example here is that when a bid situation is done for a building, okay, you don't necessarily have to be a contractor with union employees. The state rules simply say you have to pay a prevailing wage, and that wage rate is set by the state for particular projects. And so if it turns out that a contractor that does not have union employees is the low bidder, and they meet all of the other requirements, and so they're not only the low bidder, but the low qualified bidder, they get the project simply by the rules set out by the state. So the university can't pick and choose and say, well, we're only going to work with union contractors versus non-union contractors. We can't make that choice. And so we've seen unions picket university campuses, but the fact of the matter is we don't have a choice in the matter. It all comes down to who qualifies, and in the end, who's the low bidder. Now, something else is, for large projects, a contractor has to provide a performance bond, routinely about 5% of the bid. So if you think about the education and arts building, the construction budget is around, say, $18 million. And so they have to put up a performance bond of 5% of that. And the purpose of that is if for some reason the contractor said, you know what, we're not sure we're going to make any money, or we're having problems, or whatever, they walk away, we can take the money from that performance bond and reimburse ourselves for the cost of bringing another contractor in to finish the job. And so, but anyway, those are the requirements to do a construction project on the campus. And then some things related to campus food-related vendors. I mean, we have all kinds of vendors we work with. If you think of just going into a grocery store and all the different brands and companies associated there with, Del Monte vegetables versus different types of soft drinks versus Kellogg's versus all those brands and all those companies, our dining operation uses all that type of variety of vendors and companies as well. So. And then again, Coke and Coke products. We also have equipment and technology we use. In other words, cashiering stations, things like that. We have freezers, refrigerators, ovens, all of that type of equipment. So vendors for that. And then we have the other non-food suppliers. So utensils, dishes, paper products, all that type of thing. And then contracts in general. If you think the way a contract is written, usually it's a commitment that both parties make for a specified time period. And if for some reason you make, say, a 3-year contract with someone, and let's say it's Coke, just for the sake of example, but then for some reason you become unhappy with Coke, for whatever reason, then how would you get out of that contract? Well, normal contract language is going to outline that process. But usually it's performance-related things. In other words, if Coke doesn't show up and deliver the product, and then we can say, usually according to the terms of the contract, we're going to cancel this contract. But again, those things are usually specified right in the contract language, how either party can get out of the contract. But if there's no other, if there's some other reason you want to get out of the contract, but the contract doesn't allow for it, you're kind of in a real legal dilemma, put it that way. But again, usually to get out of a contract, there has to be some sort of performance issue that will allow you out of the contract. So just some summary points. Keep in mind we're a public university. Keep in mind we're taxpayer funded. So as such, we're viewed by businesses as businesses believe and want the right to compete for the university's business. And they believe they have that right by the fact that we are a public university and we are taxpayer funded. We are subject to state of Indiana rules and regulations. So we don't have a lot of discretion on things. We have to follow the rules. Our business relationships are based upon these types of processes and rules and procedures. And again, businesses want that opportunity. And so it's very difficult for us to introduce other criteria for having business relationships to allow them or not allow them. And I'll certainly entertain any questions, I guess, at the end. So.
Right, I know that many of you probably